you grow up?
I grew up in a little town called Beltsville, Maryland. It's in Prince George's County, about an hour and 20 minutes from here,
Mm.
between halfway between Baltimore and Washington, D.C.
Okay. So when did you move here?
I moved here officially in 2005. Bought a piece of property down in Tillman Island in 1995 and built a house there, and moved there in 2005.
When you were younger, did you get into any trouble?
Oh yes, I did. We could be here all day with this one, but I did get into trouble.
So what do you think the worst thing you did?
Oh, let me guess. Oh, gee. Uh, One time I got some bad grades on my report card, and I changed the grades, not thinking I was gonna get away with it, and I didn't, and I paid the price. I paid the price for it. Mom was the disciplinary in the family. My father wasn't, but I used to get disciplined by my mom and run to my father.
So, what was the happiest moment in your life? Like, what was the best thing that's happened to you?
As a kid, I answered that two stage. As a kid, one time my brother was in the Marine Corps during the Vietnam War. When he came home, he bought me a mini bike, and I had a ball with that thing as a kid. When I got older and got married, when my kids were born, I watched both my kids come in the world and being born, and that actually would be the happiest moment of my life. It was a very enjoyable experience.
Do you have any funny stories from when your kids were growing up?
Oh, plenty of them. We used to go on family vacations. In fact, we still do, believe it or not. My wife won't let the kids go. But we used to go to Florida, and one time I slammed my son's finger in the door, and that wasn't funny on his part, but we sit and laugh and talk about it now. And then we had a pet growing up, my son, a dog named Fudgy, and that dog, what would happen in the morning when the kids would go down to the school bus in the morning, which was about a quarter of a mile away, they had to walk there, that dog would walk with them to the school bus. But then when they got on the school bus, he would almost chase the bus all the way to school. And they were embarrassed. They would always come home and tell us how Fudgy they were so embarrassed because the dog chased them all the way to school.
So, how did you get into your line of work as police chief?
Well, first way it started, I needed a job. My wife and I got married when we were 21 years old. Had just graduated from college, and always looked up to the law enforcement profession. And by the mere fact of needing a job, I applied with the Maryland State Police back in 1982. Well, actually 81, and I started the police academy in 1982 and did a 25-year career with the Maryland State Police. And then I left there and retired, and it was in my blood, and came here as a St. Michael's police officer, and now I'm chief of police of St. Michael's.
When you were younger, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, my father was a bricklayer. I learned real quick working with him that I didn't want to be a bricklayer. It's hard work. He did it for 40 years, and he didn't end up with a bad back, but a lot of bricklayers did. So I knew that's one of the things, even though I learned the trade, I knew I wanted to do something else. So I went to college and put myself in a position by going to college where I could make myself flexible and marketable. And I studied accounting in college, and even though I didn't go into accounting, I had the opportunity to do it, but I got with the state police and enjoyed the career.
Do you have a nickname?
Yes, it was a nickname growing up. It was Bubs, B-U-B-S. And my grandfather was called Daddy Bubs. He was a grave digger. And he used to dig graves, and he got the nickname, well, he worked on the railroad. He was born in 1886, and he worked on the railroad his whole life. And when he retired, you know, he always did graves, but they always called him Daddy Bubs. And then they nicknamed me Bubs because they said I looked like him.
What was no, I already asked that, never mind. How would you describe yourself as a child?
Oh, rambunctious, always into something. May have probably like any other child, mischievous, but I had the good side to me. I was always compassionate with my friends, would share anything with my friends.
Mm-hmm.
But just a typical rambunctious, mischievous kid growing up. My brothers and sisters always tease me. I'm the youngest, and they always tease me that my mother spoiled me. I got away with more than they did because it was like 8 years between me and the next sibling.
Mm-hmm.
But
Do you have any favorite stories from school?
oh, geez, many of them. From when I was in elementary school, uh, I used to love playing tetherball, this sport
Mm-hmm.
called tetherball in elementary school, and we used to spend hours in recess, during recess, playing tetherball. I don't know if you're familiar with that game. It's a
Mm-hmm.
ball where you hit
Yes,
around,
tethered to the stick and you
tethered to the
hit it
stick.
around.
Yes, and play that and play. And I can remember in elementary school, Chestnut Hills Elementary School, uh, uh, going from doing recess. It was recess week we had it, and where we would spend an hour each week, each
Mm-hmm.
day during the week doing recess, and just going from playing kickball to tetherball, and then just wrestling around on the school grounds.
What is your earliest memory?
Oh, geez, I can remember probably. I'm going to say when I was my earliest memory, and I have this, and I really have never talked about my brother about it. My brother's like 12 years older than me, the one that bought me the mini bike.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember we had a dog that got run over by a car, and I probably would have been 5, maybe 4, and he would have been in his teens. But I can remember him being sad and picking the dog up and burying it out in the woods across the street. For some reason, I can remember that. You know, I don't. You know, that's one of my earliest memories in my childhood.
What were your parents like?
Oh, loving. I was fortunate to have my father died in 2001, and they were married their whole entire life. They got married in the early 40s. They stayed married for 56, almost 60
Wow.
years, and we had a loving family, and they shared love between them. And one of the things my mother constantly always tells me and my brothers and sisters, always love one another, and always continue to do that. And if one of you are doing bad, you're all doing bad. If one of you are doing good, you're all doing good.
What are some of the most important lessons that you've learned in your life?
Oh, always, even though my father was a bricklayer, he was a very intelligent man, even though bricklaying is a manual labor type skill, it was a skill. I call what's called a good philosopher, and he'd always, when I would ride to work with him sometime, he'd always tell me to stay positive in life, to always look forward, don't look back, always look forward. If you make a mistake, learn from it and move on, and always tell the truth, because if you tell the truth in life, you never have to make up lies to cover the truth, because the truth will set you free. And I learned that from him, and we used to ride along. He used to always give me little bits of wisdom like that, and always humble yourself. Whatever you do in life, be humble, remain humble. Understand what humility is about, and try not to get your back on your shoulders. Okay, pride is not always a good thing.
Who is the most important in your life? Who is the most important person in your life?
My parents. I was fortunate enough to have a mother and father at home, and again, I got a lot of wisdom from my father. My mother's still living, and they still are the most important people in my life. My family, my kids, my wife, my sons, and I try to pass that on to them. You know what I learned as a kid.
Where were you born?
I was born in Prince George's County, Cheverly, Maryland. The hospital just is not too far. I was born and raised, and was born and raised in Beltsville. That's still a family home.
Do you really enjoy your job?
Love it. Being a police officer, the most important thing you can give being a police officer is that you love people, you love community. That's the most important thing that you can do in this job, because that's what this job is all about. You can't love people, and the beauty of loving people and loving the community is it makes you have a grounding and an understanding that everybody doesn't have the same walks of life. It gives you that grounding to understand how people have different situations, and it helps you understand that. It gives you empathy about what everybody goes through in life, and just reaching out and being able to help people solve a problem. Okay, they come to you, no matter how small it is. The beauty of being a police officer, a lot of times you can solve somebody's problem. The job that you have, you can actually see the results of what you do.
When you were younger, did you think you would ever be able to, people would ever be able to invent things like iPhones or touchscreens or things like that?
No. I have trouble with that today. I mean, it's just, I'll tell you this. I have this conversation all the time with my wife. I thought growing up as a kid, you could have won millions of dollars from me if you ever told me that you could make money selling bottled water. You could not convince me of that as a kid, that you could one day sell bottled water. So to answer your question is, I could never have imagined as a kid growing up having the things that you all have access to today. And I've had this conversation with my grandmother, who was born in 1904. She died when she was 96.
Oh, wow.
When she was born, she was traveling in a horse and buggy. And then she seen the revolution come all the way in her lifetime to planes and all that kind of. So imagine that transition. And that's the way I feel about technology.
Let's see. Who were your favorite relatives?
Oh, my brothers and sisters, my mom and pop, aunts and uncles. I mean, all of them. I mean, I had a host of them. When we were raised years ago, the beauty of our community was we had our house here. My grandfather's house was next door, and then my uncle's house was on the other side. And then on my mother's side, my grandfather and grandmother lived back there. So you were raised by a village. You know, you slept either at your grandmother's, your aunt's, your uncle's house. And so that was the beauty of that. But my grandfather, I think I was probably closest to, because he was retired when I was growing up as a kid, and he taught me how to cruise, and I had fun with him. The one I told you about, that was Daddy Bubs. We had a ball growing up, and he used to come over every Sunday morning and have breakfast. My mother would fix breakfast for the family, and he'd come over, and we would have breakfast on Sunday morning, and that was really a treat growing up.